Okay, here we are again with Dimitri. How are you, Dimitri?
I'm good. How are you?
Pretty good, pretty good. So we're going to talk about, what are we going to talk about today?
Well, the last meeting of psychedelic disintegration, which was on September 3rd. Today's September 4th.
Mm-hmm.
I'm back at Cassava House in beautiful East Harlem. Yeah, it was a great meeting, and I say that often, but it fucking usually is a great meeting. Just really smart, good, kind people. I think there's a couple of things that came up. I'm looking at my notes here. There was a regular attendant, a guy who attends regularly our meetings, and all his experience, except for his Ibogaine detox, which was just a medical detox, meaning that he was just monitored medically and sort of left to his own. All his psychedelic experiences up until he's getting ready to do one that would be different, but all his psychedelic experiences have been either by himself or in a concert setting or in some sort of not professionally guided or not shamanistically guided, I guess, context. And he has nothing but good things to say about him. And I, for one, I think that's awesome. I think there's so much to be learned outside of professionalism, professional sort of leading ceremonies or guiding people. But he wants to do one that's guided, and he expressed like a lot of fear, and which I think was really interesting. Like he's afraid of doing it with someone as opposed to doing it alone. And what came up was that he said he was afraid of being seen.
He was afraid of what?
Being seen, of
being
seen. Of that sort of vulnerability and intimacy and that sort of giving over to an individual, which I think is fascinating. And if I think about it, a lot of folks have some version of that. And I think it could, of course, there's the individual, like what that's about. But I think in a lot of cases, it's about, of course, that vulnerability, that he might look a certain way or something might come out that would be embarrassing or shaming. And then also how people have a real hard time, some folks, receiving attention, receiving love, receiving a gift. I had a really wonderful guy say to me a couple months ago, before we were starting a ceremony, where we were working in Mexico, just outside of Tijuana. It was beautiful, and he took the time to go out there, and he was requesting something, and he said, "I don't want to be self-indulgent." And it occurred to me that this is a time to be completely self-indulgent. And I don't mean that in any sort of pejorative way. I mean that to be able to be held like that is a rare thing. And I think we all need to be held and honored like that. But some folks they don't know how to receive it. Just like when you give some folks a compliment or a gift, they get very self-conscious. So it was just interesting. And we talked a little bit about that. And I think he sort of came to like, what I just said here is just that it's the vulnerability, but it's also being seen and maybe some unworthiness. So, and what I said is like, whatever comes up in ceremony, whatever comes up, and a lot of people say this, it's in a session, however you want to call it, is fuel. It's juice to be worked with. There's something happening there. And I don't mean that in some sort of, mystical way. It's juice because it's coming up and you can use it. That's all. So I thought that was interesting. And then there was a guy, again, in recovery, which is coming up a lot. I think we're going to definitely do a people in recovery retreat for psychedelics. I think that's coming up. But a guy in recovery who was looking to explore psychedelics, who was a deep meditator and yoga guy, and a guy in recovery. And he was talking about his experience with his teacher, his master, his guru, and about how he had achieved non-dualist states with him and with the practice, which got a conversation going around, is it necessary to do psychedelics? And I would say no, but there are folks who are deep meditators who believe that a couple things, that it's either a shortcut and not in a good way. I feel the same way about shortcuts as I do about crutches. I think shortcuts are fucking awesome. Like, why wouldn't you want a shortcut?
Right.
I'll get it. But the idea is that that without working a disciplined practice, that somehow you're cheating the process and then, I guess, cheating yourself. And then if you go forward, you would have to go back. And this was a guy, I think he was a non-dualist teacher, I think. The idea forward.
So just for clarity, so you're saying if he was suggesting that if he took a shortcut to go forward, he would then at some point need to come back and go over some of that ground that he skipped?
Right, because there's no shortcut. I guess that's the idea. There's no shortcut. And then there was a little bit of guilt. He said that he did a little bit of MDMA and he was having this incredible heart-opening experience, but then in the back of his mind, he felt that it was a bit plastic. And that means artificial, which, I mean, I understand, but also I could say, I don't know what artificial means. I mean, I don't know what it means, but I also said I could interpret that idea of plastic as in plastic moldable and bendable and shapeable, and not in such a bad term. So that started a conversation around meditation and around 12 steps, getting there slowly. And then another guy in the group who's been coming to the group and who's a lifelong meditator and 12-step guy and yoga guy, said that he had been working for years. He hadn't used drugs in 20-something years. He was in his 50s. And he said he went to India, he did this and did that, all these practices, and was really disciplined. It still is. And he said he saw the meter go like this in 20 years, a slight move. Still depressed, still stuck. And now he goes and does ayahuasca twice a month. And his life has changed.
For the better.
For the better. Now, on the other side of that, people do use it as a way to avoid and you know, a real sort of sophisticated, not even sophisticated, sort of a chemical spiritual bypassing. And spiritual bypassing is the practice of using spirituality to sort of bypass basically living in the world. You know, somebody has, fucks up at work, for instance. It's just like, and Mercury's in retrograde, right? They have an argument with their spouse, and there was some karmatic thing. So there are folks that do that with psychedelics, to be sure. And his guru, who sounds like an amazing human being, he said wouldn't judge him, but would suggest that it was somehow, I don't know what the implication was, that you can't really get there from here by doing that. And then I was reminded of my teacher, Papa Andre, who is now passed into the realm of ancestors. But Papa Andre spoke no English and I speak no Fang. And everything was translated, a man of very few words. And usually he would say one or two things just as the sun was coming up. And this is in Gabon. He's a Bwiti. Was a Bwiti Naganga, a healer. And we would sit all day in ceremony, going, with the sun up. And again, few words. And there was two Banzas, two initiates, one being a Gabonese person and one being, I believe, a European. And they had eaten a large amount of iboga, of course, and the European guy was vomiting, like ferociously, as the sun was coming up, and we were all exhausted. We'd been going for 12 hours, and Papa Andre, sitting in his chair, just said over and over again, maybe 6 or 7 times, if you told it to this guy, if you want to see the Bwiti, and seeing the Bwiti is sort of getting to your higher self, your Christ consciousness, your Buddha nature, your Ori, depending on the tradition, but seeing yourself, seeing your truth, seeing the Bwiti. And he just said, if you want to see the Bwiti, you have to eat the wood. And the wood is iboga. Mm-hmm. If you want to see the Bwiti, you have to eat the wood. And what he was saying, or at least my interpretation, besides making us all crack up, was that if you want to see this particular form or non-form of truth or spirit or universe or God, then you have to eat the wood. And if you want to see that particular form, then you have to sit in Sangha and meditate and count your breath. And the other thing that I said was that when someone eats iboga for the first time, they are called an initiate. And what is the meaning of initiate? To initiate is to begin. So it's never seen as the destination, it's seen as the beginning. And then to use whatever you might have learned or seen or felt or absorbed in your life and in your practices.
Okay. So the iboga is not the end, it is the beginning. So the iboga is not the healing, so to speak, but it is the initiation of the healing process.
It's a tool for healing, to be certain, but it's not the end result.
It's not the end. It's the beginning.
It's the beginning. You're just starting. You're a baby. Quite literally. I mean, in the Bwiti tradition, I mean, you are literally a baby. That's why you're painted in red, because you're coming out of the womb. They say that everyone is born with the colors of the initiate.
Okay. Well, that sounds interesting. So this is what you talked about in the meeting last night. So this is all from there?
Yeah. And it was a really powerful meeting, as always, every Tuesday at, what time? 7 o'clock?
7 o'clock.
What's the address? I think it's 119 West 23rd Street.
You could always go to the website.
Go to the website and check it out.
And you'll find all the information there.
Yeah. And I think, please, folks, make comments if anyone is watching this. I don't know if anyone is.
Sure. But I have the address here in front of me, so if you want me to read it out, I will.
Read it out, bro.
Okay, so it's every Tuesday, 7 p.m. at 116 West 23rd Street on the 5th floor. The cost for the 90-minute session is $30, and you can reserve your spot online. So, yeah.
Be there or be square.
Be there or be square. All right. Anything else you want to add to this before we wrap it up?
No, I think that's good for this week.
Okay. Yeah. Sounds good.
Right.
All right. Thanks Dimitri. And we'll see you next week.
Okay. Awesome.